Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what crossing.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
Good morning from the Batcave. It is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025, and I decided to comb my hair today, so I'm not wearing my Batman hat. I'm going to try to finish up Chronicles, and then we're going to get started probably in the start of Daniel, and then we're going to jump to Ezekiel, just because Ezekiel mentions Daniel 3 times, so I want to kind of try to put it in order. But we've got about 10 chapters left of 2nd Chronicles, and I'm going to peel through that, and we're kind of leaning into the period of the Assyrian invasion and then the Babylonian captivity. So over these next 10 chapters, we'll cover that. Let's see. So we're on 2nd Chronicles chapter 27. And if you remember, Uzziah was the last king. He had a good long reign of like 50 years. There's probably overlap with him and his son Jotham, because he gets leprosy after he kind of hits the pinnacle of his reign, because he tries to go offer incense to the Lord. He's thinking, he just starts smoking his own stuff, and he gets a little uppity, and he thinks, I'm doing so great. The Lord's obviously pleased with me. I'm going to go offer incense to him. And the priests kick him out. And as they're kicking him out, he gets leprosy. And he's going to have leprosy for like the last 24, 26 years of his reign. And that may be the entire reign of Jotham. Like, that might just be wrapped up in his reign, which is why in Isaiah he skips from Uzziah to Ahaz and says almost nothing about Jotham. So I would just assume that. We know there's some years, again, that are missing. If we have a 1446 BC Exodus, and this would erase 26 of those 46 years we would need to account for. And it just kind of makes sense. So anyways, it says Jotham was 25 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was also Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. So this is important here. First of all, he's reigning in Jerusalem, and it does say that his son is going to basically be doing the reigning while he's with leprosy, because he's unclean, so people can't even come before him. But this is important here because you see that his father would have been married to a daughter of Zadok, which means you now have the ordained Levitical line that is supposed to rule for eternity merged in with the Davidic line. Okay, so the reason you want to understand Zadok is you want to start with who Zadok is. Now, there's 2 Zadoks, and this is going to be Zadok the second, who his daughter is. But the first Zadok, the son of Ahitub, the son of Abimelech, the son of Abiathar, he's going to be during the days of David. This is going to be the priest that sticks with David when his son, I think I forget his name, is Abijah or something like that, tries to take the throne before David dies. And so this Zadok is going to actually be a descendant of Phinehas. You have that listed here in because Ezra is also related to him. You have that in his ancestry in Ezra 7. He says the son of Shallum, the son of Zadok. So that's Zadok the second, the son of Ahitub, the son of Abariah, the son of Azariah, the son of Marioth, the son of Zariah, the son of Uzi, the son of Buki, the son of Abiusha, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the chief priest. And if you remember, Phinehas is the guy who, when basically the Israelites are being seduced by Midianites who were sent by, I believe, Moabites to basically seduce them into idolatry so that God would judge them. And this was all Balaam the prophet's plan. Phinehas is the one who runs into the tent where they're fornicating. It's basically a prostitution racket they got going on. It's not just a couple that got together and are having sex or even got married or anything like that. It's a prostitution racket. He runs and stabs a spear through 2 that are fornicating, and God's wrath ceases, and the plague or whatever's happening to them stops. And when he does this, he promises Phinehas an eternal priesthood, and that's a promise that is just like when he's promising an eternal throne to David. He's promising an eternal priesthood to Phinehas, which is a huge problem for Christians that they kind of just gloss over because the Levitical priesthood is gone. So how can God keep the promise to Phinehas of being an eternal priesthood? And people will say, oh, that's, hyperbolic language, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. He says, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has turned away my wrath from the children of Israel while he was zealous for my sake among them, that I consume not the children of Israel in my jealousy. Wherefore say, behold, I give unto him my covenant of peace, and he shall have it, and his seed after him, even the covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was zealous for his God and made atonement for the children of Israel. So he makes atonement by killing some people that are sinning. Isn't that amazing? He's making reconciliation. He put the breach. He closed the breach between them and God. Okay, and so you say he will have it, and his seed after him, a covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Which means, if the Aaronic priesthood fails, God still has a covenant with Phinehas for an everlasting priesthood. Well, the Aaronic covenant has failed. It's done. It's over. So when you get to this promise, it's important to know that there's going to be two Zadoks, and here's the whole genealogy in 1 Chronicles chapter 6. It says the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, Merari. The sons of Kohath, Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel. The sons of Amram, Aaron, and Moses. Miriam, also the sons of Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. So these two die, these two live. Eleazar begot Phinehas, Phinehas begot Abishua begot Buki, Buki begot Uzi begot Zariah, Zariah got Marioth, and Marioth begot Amariah, and Amariah begot Ahitub. Now Ahitub is the son of the priest who gets killed when Saul sends Doeg the Edomite to kill all the priests for helping David. So this is the guy who basically they go guerrilla style with David and hang out with him for a while. And then his son is Zadok. And Zadok is basically the priest in David's old age. And so it's him and Nathan the prophet and Bathsheba who come to him and warn him of this son trying to take over his kingdom. So it says Zadok begot Amihaz. And just so you know, it's probably not the son initiating this takeover. It's probably Joab who's doing it, and he's thinking he's going to be the power behind the throne because he moved his son. And that's why David is just like to Solomon, you need to kill Joab, basically. Joab's been kind of trying to be a power to himself through David's entire administration, and sometimes he is right, but he's not right in the fact that he is not the ordained authority, and he is trying to pull weight. And he basically tries to pull weight away from David's choice for king, which maybe he's offended at the fact that David's going to put the son of, a woman he stole, and Joab knows that, on the throne. But the point is it's not Joab's decision. So anyways, Joab's going to move that son to try to take over, who would have been the next born after Absalom. So, the normal next in line, while David's sick and old and tired, and then they put Solomon on the throne, and Zadok is the priest who is going to anoint Solomon. So that makes him special, but it's this transition from Ahitub, because remember, this is guerrilla style, until Zadok, when the tabernacle is recovered, when that period when the priesthood is basically not defunct because Saul killed a bunch of them and there's no priestly operation going on. And so this is when the descendants of Phinehas gain control of the priesthood, because Phinehas is actually not the one who's in control of the priesthood until that time. He is a priest, but he is not the chief priest. So Zadok becomes the chief priest at that time, and then we're going to see it go down to Ahimaaz, Azariah, Johanan, Azariah, and notice it says, "Is he that executed the priest's office in the temple that Solomon built in Jerusalem?" I don't know how you get your four priests later when Solomon builds the temple, because he builds the temple pretty early on into his reign. So this might be a duplicate. This might be this Azariah, who would be, again, Zadok's grandson. That would make more sense to me. But anyways, it says Azariah begot Amariah, and Amariah begot Ahitub. So we have a second Ahitub, and Ahitub begot Zadok, and Zadok begot Shalom. So this is the second Zadok now. And you have Ahitub, the father of Zadok, twice. And this is going to be confusing, because when they write Ezra chapter 7, and this might not be Ezra doing this, it might be a scribe who is pulling the book of Ezra together. He truncates from this Ahitub and Zadok to this Ahitub and Zadok and cuts out the stuff that's in between. He does that by mistake, I think, or he's just truncating on purpose. But it doesn't seem like that because he seems to skip everything that's between the two Ahitubs and Zadok. And then it says Shalom begat Hilkiah, Hilkiah begat Azariah, Azariah begat Sariah, Sariah begat Jehozadak, and Jehozadak went into captivity when the Lord carried away Judah and Jerusalem by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. So you see that this line of Zadok is preserved until the Babylonian captivity, and it's that line that forms the Sadducees. That's what they're based on, is Saduk, Zadok, Sadducee. It's the descendants of this second Zadok that become the Sadducees. So that's important to note, that even though this priesthood of the Sadducees is going to fail, this is the priesthood that crucifies Christ. God has preserved his promise to Phinehas in the in having Zadok have a daughter that marries into the line of Judah. So as long as somebody related to Uzziah and Jotham down the line becomes the priest in place of the Aaronic priesthood, the promise to Phinehas is preserved. Well, Jesus is going to become the Melchizedek priest to replace the Aaronic priesthood, and this is all in Hebrews. And then when we get down to the millennium, when Jesus is back, the priests of Zadok are actually going to be the ones who are serving him in Ezekiel's temple. So if you go to Ezekiel 40 through 48, we'll go through that in detail. You see 4 mentions of Zadok there. This is mentioning how when the Israelites went astray, the Sadducees, the sons of Zadok, did not. And what I believe they're referencing is in the last days, it's going to be the other Levites that gather around the Antichrist and the image of the beast. And the sons of Zadok in the last days don't seem to participate in that. So whoever they are, they're known. Remember, if Hebrew has the last name Kohanim, that means he's of the priests. And so they're going to have some general understanding of who their lineage is. But the sons of Zadok are going to resist. Now, are these going to be the people who lead the Israelites into the wilderness? Maybe. But the point is that they're going to live in the millennium. And this is not resurrected saints. These are actually people, because it talks about who they marry and who they need to marry to have kids. So we know these can't be resurrected saints. They have to be actual descendants of Zadok who survive the end times into the millennium. So, again, we'll go over that in detail when we get into Ezekiel, but I just want to show all that to you guys because it's a very important transition. We now have no need to preserve the line of Aaron in order to preserve the promise to Phinehas because it's in Christ now. So even if those sons of Zadok weren't ministering in the millennium, you still have the Melchizedek priesthood, and basically the line of Phinehas is built into that in Christ. So he says, and he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father Uzziah did, howbeit he entered not into the temple of the Lord, and the people people did yet corruptly. So in other words, he's good, and he didn't make the mistake his father did, but the people are still screwing the pooch. They're still doing bad things, and it's not necessarily him that's doing it, but the people are awful. This is around the time where Assyria is starting to take over Israel. And this is important because when Assyria starts to take care of Israel, what you had before that is the more righteous of Israel would leave Israel and move to Judah. So you would have people who maybe have lands, let's say. Well, the lands they might have manned by servants, but they're actually living in Judah. The Levitical priests are all living in Judah. These people who are probably wealthier nobles who have lands, they're having others work those lands, basically like peasants and stewards, if you will. And they're living in Jerusalem because they don't want to live near all this idolatry. Well, once Assyria starts to take over, there's a shift. And what ends up happening is now it's not the righteous moving to Jerusalem, it's just the rich. The people who can get away from Israel and from the calamities that are coming upon them because of Assyria. They kind of liberate everything from Damascus, and then after that, Assyria comes in and starts taking everything over. So that's when the rich are just going to start to move to Jerusalem. So what you're going to have is not people who are moving to Jerusalem because they follow the true God, but just because they have means, and they're going to bring their idolatry with them. So it says, as far as Jotham, it says he built the upper gate of the house of the Lord, and he did extensive building on the wall of Ophel. So when we're looking at Jerusalem, they're going to keep adding to it. Uzziah does some building. He's going to add, if you remember, he adds towers to it with trebuchets or something along those lines. And then this wall of Ophel, you see this is the original city of David where it was, and then you get this uphill portion. At the top of the city of David, I believe it is. No, it might be on Mount Moriah. There's where the temple is. I'm sorry. You have this additional temple just underneath, or this additional wall just underneath the temple. So they've now expanded this main wall of Jerusalem, and you see how you've got the Kidron Valley, which is a pretty deep valley. And that makes it really difficult to besiege that. So he is extending the potential to host people if the land gets besieged. They're preparing for more Israelites coming as the Assyrians continue to invade. So you see this is, I believe this is meant to be in the time of Christ here. So you've got kind of Roman columns and the much larger wall, but these two walls you see here would have probably been all that the city of Jerusalem was at that time. So you have the city of David, and then you have this additional wall of Ophel, but you see this cliff that's surrounding half of it on that side. And so they've got pretty good, you see also mounds on the other side, and that's eventually going to be built up. So they have a pretty decent sized fortified city here, and it's, again, the people don't all live in it all the time, but they can at least store a bunch of food in it and treat it like a castle if they get besieged. So he said, moreover, he built cities in the high country of Judea and forts and towers in the wooded hills. He fought with the king of the Ammonites and prevailed against them. The Ammonites gave him that year 100 talents of silver, 10,000 cores of wheat, and 10,000 cores of barley. The Ammonites paid him the same amount the second and third years. So he's put them to tribute. Again, the Assyrians aren't really invading yet in terms of Israel. They may have started to take in some of the lands east of the Jordan. I know they first come after like Reuben and those guys. So he said, Jotham became strong because he ordered his ways before the Lord. Now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all his wars and his ways are written in the book of Kings of Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. Jotham slept with his ancestors, and they buried him in the city of David, and his son Ahaz succeeded. So I'm sorry, no, Assyria is not coming yet, because it's in the days of Ahaz that Israel and Damascus are coming against them. So what's happened is they've fought their wars back and forth. Israel has claimed their lands back from them, and now they've become allies. And so they're going to try to team up on Judah now. This is how they kind of make friends. How about we be friends and just go try to fight these guys instead? Deal. That sounds better than fighting each other. So it says, in the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, King Ahaz of Jotham of Judah, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord, as his ancestor David had done. And it looks like they start to enter in a pattern of co-rule. And this might be where these 20 years disappear over the time. So you may have these guys co-ruling with their son for a few years as they're getting old. Because most of these guys are dying of old age. They're not dying in battle or anything like that. So he says, but he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and he made his son pass through the fire according to the abominable practices of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. So he is sacrificing sons to Molech, which is evil. He sacrificed and made offerings on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. Then King Rezin of Aram and King Pekah of Remaliah of Israel came up to wage war in Jerusalem. They besieged Ahaz, but could not conquer him. Now, if you remember, Ahaz is the one who gets the prophecy about the virgin birth, and he also gets the prophecy about a child being born as a sign that this Rezin and Pekah are going to be taken away by the king of Assyria. So what's going on here? Why did he turn and sacrifice his son to try to, appease to pagan gods to try to help him? Well, because he's under the influence of these Israelites, probably, who are bringing essentially Baal and Molech worship and stuff like that to him. For whatever reason, they've gotten very corrupt, and this corruption is actually going to get right into the priesthood. So he says, at that time, the king of Edom recovered Elath for Edom, and he drove away the Judeans from Elath, and the Edomites came to Elath, where they live to this day. So Elath is the port city of Elat. is basically their port on the Red Sea. So the Edomites took that back. It's going to be taken from them, I believe, in the days of David. That it's basically Aqaba on the Jordan side and Elat on the side of Israel, and the Edomites now have that port. So they don't. I think they might still have Joppa. I don't think they have Haifa, but all of that may be part of Israel. So they might not have any port cities anymore, which is not great for them in terms of trade and income. So Ahaz sent messengers to King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Now, this is really important. If a king voluntarily says, I am your servant and your son, God's going to hold them accountable to that. They made a covenant, okay? So he says, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me from the hand of the king of Aram and from the hand of the king of Israel who are attacking me. Now, he does this voluntarily. Now, Isaiah has prophesied to him that Assyria is going to take his enemies away, and God's ordained this. He didn't say submit to Assyria. This is what Ahaz does voluntarily. He is obviously worshiping idols. He's got a dumb idea in his head, and he's trying to force the prophecy to come to pass by his own voluntary submission to the king of Assyria, which is not good. So he says, Ahaz took the silver and gold found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house and sent a present to the king of Assyria. So if you remember in the days of Joash, they collected all this money for the continual repairs of the temple. Well, he took all that money and gave it to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria listened to him, and the king of Assyria marched up against Damascus and took it, carrying away its people captive to Kir, and then he killed Rezin. Okay, so he kills their king. This Kir is a place near Damascus, or I think it's kind of near like Ammon. Let's see where Kir is. Kir Hareseth might be it. Yep. So no, here's the Dead Sea right here. So yeah, this is Ammon. So he's basically taking them captive. Why is he taking them to Ammon? I don't know. Maybe they're just dispersing them like Assyrians tend to do from their homeland. But essentially, he has taken over Damascus at this point. Damascus had been in the hands of these Aramean sons of Ben-Hadad since the time of Solomon. So like 300 years. And it's no longer theirs. So King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, and he saw the altar that was at Damascus, and King Ahaz sent the priest Uriah a model of the altar and its pattern, exact in all its details. The priest Uriah built the altar, and according with all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus, just so did the priest Uriah build it before Ahaz arrived in Damascus. So they're going to have these cult centers, kind of. I think Mari is going to be one of them, and they're basically going to have priests there or prophets there that are going to prophesy for gods like Inanna and Enlil and stuff like that. So they really are pagan, demonized prophets. And it looks like that he's going to move the kind of altar dedicated to those gods down to Assyria or down to Damascus. And that's where he's going to offer up his incense or whatever he's doing to his gods in light of this victory. And because King Ahaz voluntarily submitted to him, and this guy basically took out his enemies, he's going to go there to pay tribute to this king. That's probably where he gives him all the money. And to suck up to this king even more, he's going to copy the altar that the king has to these pagan gods, which are probably like, again, OG. It might be Dagon and stuff like that. I don't know who's that popular at this time. But it's basically the OG Assyrian, Sumerian, Mesopotamian gods. Then he says, when the king came from Damascus, the king viewed the altar, and the king drew near the altar, went up on it, and offered burnt offerings and his grain offerings, poured his drink offering, and dashed the blood of his offerings of well-being, so his peace offerings against the altar. So he's essentially offering up these offerings to these false gods, maybe, or maybe he's just using their style of an altar to impress Ahaz, but thinks he's offering to the true God. But it's not for him. Well, it's not necessarily for him to. No, I'm sorry. He can offer altar offerings. He just can't offer incense inside the temple. But it does look like he's doing a pagan thing. So he says, the bronze altar that was before the Lord he removed from the front of the house and placed for the place between his altar and the house of the Lord, and he put it on the north side of his altar. So this is probably relevant when you guys are thinking about, if you hear this theory about how maybe they're going to rebuild the temple so they have both the temple and the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. That's not off base of what the Israelites have done in the past with pagan worship. See, they just moved the real altar north, and then they put the pagan altar next to it. So it's apropos for what these various kings of Judah have done in the past, and it wouldn't be shocking if they do something like that again. So anyways, it says, King Ahaz commanded the priest Uriah, saying, upon the altar offer the morning burnt offering and the evening grain offering and the king's burnt offering and the grain offering with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, their grain offering, their drink offering, and dash against it the blood of the burnt offering, the blood of the sacrifice. The bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. Inquire of who? And he may be a syncretist, thinking, their gods are just other names for the true God. Doesn't really get into detail on that. He is going to repent of this, though. He says, the priest Uriah did everything that King Ahaz commanded. The King Ahaz cut off the frames of the stands and removed the laver from them, and he removed the sea of bronze oxen that were under it, and he put it on a pediment of stone. Why did he remove the bronze oxen? I don't know. The covered portal for use in the Sabbath that had been built inside the palace, the outer entrance of the king, he removed from the house of the Lord. He did this because of the king of Assyria. It says he did this because of the king of Assyria. So whatever he's doing, maybe it's because they worship the bowl of heaven, which is Nana or sin, is the reason why it might be an affront to them to have these 4 bowls holding up the sea of brass. And those bowls might represent, because there are cherubims or seraphim, one of the two, I think it's cherubims, that are like bulls or calves. And they might be symbolizing that and something, having to do with the temple in heaven, because David does get divine revelation about how to build the temple. But they worship the bull of heaven, and they might be like, the bull of heaven is a high deity to us, and you guys treating him like he's just a common angel, and there's 4 of them is, offensive. So he's doing whatever he's doing to suck up to the king of Assyria. And it doesn't say why. It doesn't say he does it to give him the bronze. It's just saying he's doing it because of the king of Assyria. So he's just sucking up to him, and he seems to be stylizing their worship in a way that is compatible with the Assyrian worship. So he's basically syncretizing. He says, now the rest of the acts of Ahaz that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Ahaz slept with his ancestors, and he was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. His son Hezekiah succeeded him. So I apologize. He may not have repented. I might be getting him mixed up with Manasseh. He may not have repented. So he gets this prophecy from Isaiah when he's still a pretty young king. I think he's like in the 3rd or 8th year of his reign. And he just gets worse and worse and worse because, again, he's self-fulfilling prophecy. He's syncretizing. He's just being a politician with religion, and that is the definition of spiritual harlotry. So then it says, we're in Kings. I apologize. I just read you Kings instead of Chronicles. Oh, well. It says, Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord, as his ancestor David had done. He walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He even cast images for Baal. So remember, the Israelites are coming towards him, and he's sucking up to them. He made offerings in the valley of Hinnom. He made his sons pass through the fire according to the abominable practice of the nations who the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. He sacrificed and made offerings in the high places on the hills and under every green tree. Therefore the Lord gave him into the hand of the king of Aram, who defeated and took captive a great number of people and brought them to Damascus. He was also given in the hand of the king of Israel, who defeated him with a great slaughter. So he's doing all this pagan stuff before these guys come in. Isaiah has prophesied to him, but he's, looking to the Israelites who are looking to the Canaanites. Pekah the son of Remaliah killed 120,000 in Judah in one day. 120,000, all of them valiant warriors, because they had abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors. So this is Israel. Even though Israel is on its downfall, they still kill 120,000 in their army. And Zikri, a mighty warrior of Ephraim, killed the king's son Messiah, Azrikam, the commander of the palace, and Elkanah, the next in authority to the king. Wow. So the steward, basically. The people of Israel took captive 200,000 of their kin, women, sons, and daughters, and they took much booty from them and brought the booty to Samaria. But a prophet of the Lord was there, whose name was Oded, and he went out to meet the army that came to Samaria and said, because the Lord, the God of your ancestors, was angry with Judah, he gave them into your hand, but you have killed them in a rage that has reached up to heaven. So God was punishing them, and you guys overdid it. Now you intend to subjugate the people of Judah and Jerusalem, male and female, as your slaves, but what have you except sins against the Lord your God? In other words, you guys are loaded with sins and you know it. And this is what God did to us for our sins, and you're going to try to enslave us. So they already killed 120, but enslaving these 200,000 is over the top. Okay, now you're looking probably at a total population of something like 4 to 5 million, but this is basically mostly right from Jerusalem, where they're taking all these captives. So he says, now you intend to subjugate the people of Judah and Jerusalem. He says, now hear me and send back the captives who you have taken from your kindred, for a fierce wrath of the Lord is upon you. Moreover, certain chiefs of the Ephraimites, Azariah the son of Johanan, Berechiah the son of Meshillemeth, Jehizekiah the son of Shallum, and Amasa the son of Hadley, stood up against those who were coming from the war, and said to them, you shall not bring the captives in here, for you propose to bring guilt against the Lord in addition to your present sins and guilt, for your guilt is already great, and there is fierce wrath in Israel. So in the earlier days, the kings of Israel were actually trying to prevent the people of Israel from going up to Judah, but it's probably lax a bit since then, and also Judah is lax in terms of syncretism and idolatry, and so you have people from Israel probably going up to Jerusalem to worship, and they're like, we're not trying this. They somewhat fear the Lord, so we're not trying to bring these people in here and bring the wrath on us. So the warriors left the captives and the booty before the officials and all the assembly. Then those who were mentioned by name got up and took the captives and with the booty, and they clothed all that were naked among them. So these guys right here. They clothed them, gave them sandals, provided them with food and drink, and anointed them, and carrying all the feeble among them on donkeys, they brought them to their kindred at Jericho, the city of the palm trees. Then they returned to Samaria. So they just basically returned these people from slavery. At that time, King Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria for help. So this is all the stuff that went down by the time he started sucking up to the king of Assyria. Now, God already told him Assyria was going to come. But what happened? Well, you were super, super wicked, and you led these guys who God said, we're going to take captive to beat you. So it says, for the Edomites had invaded and defeated Judah and carried away captives. So this is Obadiah. If you remember, Obadiah is cursing the Edomites for doing this, but he seems to be prophesying that they will do it in the future. Now, there could have been another time that they did it, but remember, there's specific stuff in Obadiah about the Judahites sacking Jerusalem. Or I'm sorry, the Edomites sacking Jerusalem. And this would be here because the kingdom of Israel did sack Jerusalem and take all these captives and kill all these people. So the Edomites seem to go with them. And then after that, they're going to take a lot. And the Philistines had made raids in the cities of Shephelah and the Negeb in Judah, and had taken Beth Shemesh, Aijalon, Gedero, Soko and his villages, Timnah with its villages, Gizmo with its villages, and they settled there. So the Philistines are also making a comeback now. For the Lord brought Judah low because of King Ahaz of Israel, for he behaved without restraint in Judah and had been faithless to the Lord. So King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria came against him and oppressed him instead of strengthening him. For Ahaz plundered the house of the Lord and the houses of the kings of the officials, and gave tribute to the king of Assyria, but it did not help him. In the time of his distress, he became yet more faithless to the Lord, the same King Ahaz, for he sacrificed to the gods of Damascus, which had defeated him. So remember, Assyria is going to sack Damascus, but then they're going to sacrifice to the gods of Damascus to win their favor. This was a common thing going all the way back to Sargon of Akkad, okay? And they they have kings named Sargon, so it's kind of like they see themselves as the heirs, the true heirs to Sargon's empire, because Nineveh and all was built by Sargon, okay? So they're in the habit of conquering peoples and then sacrificing or paying homage to their god, and that's how they claim a divine right of rule over the lands they conquered. Then he says, because the gods of the kings of Aram helped him, I will sacrifice to them so that they may help me, but they were the ruin of him and all Israel. Ahaz gathered together utensils of the house of God and cut them into pieces, the utensils of the house of God. He shut up the doors of the house of God and made himself altars in every corner of Jerusalem. So they're summarizing what he was doing. And then he says, in every city of Judah, he made high places to offer offerings to other gods, provoking the anger of the Lord and the God of his ancestors. Now the rest of his acts and all his ways from the first to last are written in books of the kings of Judah and Israel. Ahaz slept with his ancestors, and they buried him in the city of Jerusalem. but they did not bring him into the tombs of the kings of Israel. His son Hezekiah succeeded him. So he just goes from bad to worse. I'm sorry. There's no redeeming qualities in this guy. He goes from syncretism to getting a bunch of people killed, getting a bunch of people taken captive. Let's try worshiping more false gods and see if that helps. We'll dig our way out, you say, when you're in a pit. Hezekiah began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, just as his ancestor David had done. In the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them. So notice how this summary, they're basically breaking down these kings to like, he did bad, he did good. And they summarize it, and then they kind of break down the details of what he did. Because we're really just talking about the downward slide from David and Solomon. So he says, in the first year of his reign, the first month, he opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them. He brought the priests and the Levites and assembled them in the square in the east. And he says, listen to me, Levites, sanctify yourself and sanctify the house of the Lord, the God of your ancestors, and carry out the filth from the holy place. So he's purging what his dad had done. For our ancestors have been unfaithful and have done what is evil in the sight of the Lord, our God, and they have forsaken him. They have turned away their faces from the dwelling of the Lord and turned their backs. They also shut the doors of the vestibule and put out the lamps and have not offered incense or made burnt offerings in the holy place of the God of Israel. Therefore the wrath of the Lord has come upon Judah and Jerusalem, and he has made them an object of horror, of astonishment, and of hissing, as you see with your own eyes. Our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this. Now it was in my heart to make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that the fierce anger may turn away from us. My sons, do not now be negligent, for the Lord has chosen you to stand in his presence, to minister to him, and to be his ministers, and make offering to him. Then the Levites arose, and Mahalath the son of Amasai, and Joel the son of Azariah, and the sons of the Kohathites, and the sons of Merari, Kish the son of Abdi, Azariah the son of Jehalelel, and the Gershonites, and Joah the son of Zimmah, and Eden the son of Joah, and the sons of Elizaphan, and Shimri, and Jewel, and the sons of Asaph, and Zechariah, and Mattaniah, and the sons of Heman, and Joel, and Shimei, and the sons of Jeduthun, and Shammai, and Uzziel. They gathered their brothers, sanctified themselves, and went in as the king commanded in the words of the Lord to cleanse the house of the Lord. I don't know why they feel the need to take down so many details, except probably that the people who are coming back are probably related to these people, and it's a big deal to them. So that maybe they're honoring these people who are coming back to rebuild the temple and whatnot, and their ancestors are the ones who cleansed the temple in past times. So he says, the priests went into the inner part of the house of the Lord to cleanse it, and they brought out all the unclean things that they found in the temple of the Lord into the court of the house of the Lord. And the Levites took them and carried them out to the Wadi Kidron, so the brook Kidron. Wadi is basically just like a brook or a stream or a river that just floods annually with the rains and then dries back up. They began to sanctify on the first day of the first month, and on the 8th day of the 8th month they came to the vestibule of the house of the Lord, and then for 8 days they sanctified the house of the Lord, and on the 16th day of the first month they finished. Then they went inside to Hezekiah, and he said, we have cleansed the house of the Lord, the altar of the burnt offering and all its utensils, and the table for the rows of bread and all its utensils, and the utensils that King Ahaz repudiated during his reign when he was faithless, we have made ready. They are in the front of the altar of the Lord. Then King Hezekiah rose early and assembled the officials of the city and went up to the house of the Lord. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, 7 male goats for a sin offering to the kingdom in the sanctuary of Judah, and he commanded the priests and the descendants of Aaron to offer them in the house of the Lord. So they slaughtered the rams and the bulls, and the priests received the blood and dashed it against the altar, and slaughtered the rams with the blood, and was dashed against the altar, and they also slaughtered the lambs, and their blood was dashed against the altar. Then the male goats for a sin offering were brought to the king in the assembly, and they laid hands on them. And the priests slaughtered them and made a sin offering with their blood at the altar to make atonement for all Israel. For the king commanded that the burnt offering and the sin offering should be made for all Israel. He stationed the Levites in the house of the Lord with cymbals, harps, lyres, according to the commandment of David and Gad the king's seer and the prophet Nathan, for the commandment was from the Lord through his prophets. The Levites stood with the instruments of David and the priests and the trumpets. Then Hezekiah commanded that the burnt offering be offered on the altar. When the burnt offering began, the son of the Lord began also, and the trumpets accompanied by the instruments of King David of Israel. The whole assembly worshipped, the singers sang, and the trumpeters sounded, and all this continued until the burnt offering was finished. Then the offering was finished, the king and all who were present with him, and bowed down and worshipped. King Hezekiah and the officials commanded the Levites to sing praises to the Lord with words, and David and the seer of Asaph. David and the seer Asaph, So in other words, the Psalms, they're singing the Psalms. Interesting that they call him the words of David and the seer Asaph, so he's substantial in the authoring the Psalms. They sang praises with gladness, and they bowed down and worshipped. Then Hezekiah said, "You have now consecrated yourselves to the Lord. Come near, bring sacrifices and thank offerings to the house of the Lord." The assembly brought sacrifices and thank offerings, and all who have a willing heart brought burnt offerings. The whole of the burnt offerings that the assembly brought was 70 bulls, 100 rams, 200 lambs, and they were for a burnt offering to the Lord. The consecrated offerings were 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep. Not as many as before, but it's still a pretty good number. But the priests were too few and could not skin all the burnt offerings until the other priests had sanctified themselves. Their kindred, the Levites, helped them until the work was finished, for the Levites were more conscientious than the priests in sanctifying themselves. So in other words, they were taking the time to do the process right where the priests were not. Besides the great number of burnt offerings, there was a fat of the offerings of well-being, peace offerings. I hate that term. And there were drink offerings and burnt offerings. Thus the service of the house of the Lord was restored, and Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced because of what God had done for the people, for the thing had come about suddenly. Probably spontaneously is what they meant. Let's see. Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah and wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh that they should come to the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, keep the Passover of the Lord in Israel. For the king and his officials and all the assembly of Jerusalem had taken counsel to keep the Passover in the second month, for they could not keep it at its proper time because the priests had not sanctified themselves in sufficient number, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. So they're keeping it late because the priests are finally ready. The plan seemed right to the king and to the assembly, so they decreed to make a proclamation throughout all Israel from Beersheba to Dan that people should come and keep the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel, at Jerusalem, for they had not kept it in great numbers as prescribed. So couriers went throughout all Israel and Judah with letters from the king and his official, and as the king commanded, O people of Israel, return to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, that he may turn again the remnant of you who have escaped from the hands of the king of Assyria. So he has already invaded and taken Gad, half-tribe of Manasseh, and Reuben. He's taken their cities and taken a bunch of them captive. I'm sure a lot of them escaped into Israel. He may have taken Dan by now, but I'm not sure. Do not be like your ancestors and your kindred who are faithless to the Lord, the God of their ancestors, so that he made them a desolation as you see. Do not now be stiff-necked as your ancestors were, but build yourselves to the Lord and come to his sanctuary, which he has sanctified forever, and serve your Lord God, so this fierce anger may turn away from you. For as you return to the Lord, your kindred and your children will find compassion with their captors and return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful and will not turn away his face from you if you return to him. So the couriers went from city to city through the country of Ephraim and Manasseh and as far as Zebulun, but they laughed them to scorn and mocked them. So they're literally like, you guys want to repent? Like, Assyria is kicking your butt. And they mocked them. Only a few from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. So this is kind of the lowlands around Ephraim. Okay, Ephraim and Issachar are kind of the main highland groups. There's actually a couple different highlands, but there's the main highland around Ephraim near Benjamin, and then there's a lowland, and then there's a highland of Issachar. And these guys are like, no, we got this. And some of the people of the lowlands who are like, no, they can come and clear us out really easy. We're going to try this repentance stuff. And he says, the hand of God, who was also on Judah to give them one heart to do what the king and the officials commanded by the word of the Lord. Many people came together in Jerusalem to keep the festival of unleavened bread in the second month, and a very large assembly. So they set to work and removed the altars that were in Jerusalem and all the altars for the offering of incense they took away and threw into the Wadi Kidron, the Kidron Valley. They slaughtered the Passover lamb to the fort. So the Kidron Valley, just so you know, even to this day, is basically a garbage dump. People just throw their garbage down this hillside. It's just a thing. They're just like, this is where they used to offer sacrifices to Molech, and even to this day in Jerusalem, you'll just see down this mountainside, people are just throwing their garbage down it. It doesn't look great, but they don't like the place. So it says they slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the second month. The priests and Levites were ashamed, and they sanctified themselves and brought burnt offering to the house of the Lord. They took their accustomed pots according to the law of Moses and the man of God, and the priests dashed the blood that they received in the hands of the Levites. For there were many in the assembly who had not sanctified themselves. Therefore the Levites had to slaughter the Passover lamb for everyone that was not clean and make it holy to the Lord. They're like, there's a lot of slaughtering. There's a lot of people who are getting a Passover lamb, and these guys aren't all sanctified, so this is a lot more work for us. For a multitude of the people, many of them from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun, had not cleansed themselves, yet they ate the Passover otherwise than as prescribed. But Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, "The good Lord pardon all who set their hearts to seek God, and the Lord their God of their answers, even though not in accordance with the sanctuary's rules of cleanliness." And the Lord heard Hezekiah and healed the people. The people of Israel who were present at Jerusalem kept the festival of unleavened bread 7 days with great gladness, and the Levites and the priests praised the Lord day by day, accompanied by loud instruments of the Lord. So they're keeping the whole feast of the feast of unleavened bread with the Passover. So it's like an 8-day total feast. Then Hezekiah spoke encouragingly to all the Levites who showed good skill in the service of the Lord. So the people ate food for the festival of 7 days, sacrificing offerings, peace offerings, and giving thanks to the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Then the whole assembly agreed together to keep the festival for another 7 days, so they kept another 7 days with gladness. We're going to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread double this time, to make up for all the centuries we haven't been keeping it. For the king Hezekiah of Judah gave the assembly 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep for offerings, and the officials gave the assembly 1,000 bulls and 1,000 sheep, and the priests sacrificed themselves in great numbers. They're like, hey, if there's free food, we'll stay. The whole assembly of Judah and the priests and the Levites, the whole assembly that came out of Israel, and the resident aliens who came out of the land of Israel, and the resident aliens who lived in Judah rejoiced, and there was great joy in Jerusalem, for since the time of Solomon, the son of King David of Israel, there had been nothing like this in Jerusalem. Then the priests and the Levites stood up and blessed the people, and their voice was heard, and their prayer came into the holy dwelling in heaven. Now when all this was finished, all Israel who were present went out to the cities of Judah and broke down the pillars and hewed down the sacred poles, the Asherah poles, pulled down the high places and the altars, throughout all Judah and Benjamin and Ephraim and Manasseh, until they had destroyed them all. Then all the people of Israel returned to their cities and their individual properties. So there's a lot of zeal going on here. You guys, we're going to repent this time. We're going to stop worshiping these idols this time. Hezekiah appointed the divisions of the priests and the Levites, division by division, everyone according to his service, the priests and the Levites, the burnt offerings, the offerings of well-being, to minister at the gates of the camp of the Lord, to give thanks and praise. The contribution of the king from his own possession was the burnt offerings, the morning, the evening, the burnt offerings, the Sabbath, the new moons, and the appointed festivals, as was written in the law of the Lord. He commanded the people who lived in Jerusalem to give the portion due to the priests and the Levites, so that they might devote themselves to the law of the Lord. Remember, they're supposed to be executing the law, judging according to law, and teaching people the law. And people are not giving them their tithe, and so they have to work for a living, and they're not able to do the job. And he's turning things around. People are tithing again. As soon as the word spread, the people of Israel gave in abundance the first fruits of grain, wine, oil, honey, and all the produce of the field, and they brought in abundantly the tithe of everything. The people of Israel and Judah who lived in the city of Judah also brought the tithe of cattle and sheep and the tithe of dedicated things that had been consecrated to the Lord their God, and laid them in heaps. On the 3rd month they began to pile up the heaps, and finished them in the 7th month. Then when Hezekiah and the officials came and saw the heaps, they blessed the Lord and his people Israel. Hezekiah questioned the priests and the Levites about the heaps. The chief priest Azariah, who was of the house of Zadok, answered him, since they have begun to pray for the contributions of the house of the Lord, we have had enough to eat and plenty to spare, for the Lord has blessed his people so that we have a great supply left over. Then Hezekiah commanded them to prepare the store chambers in the house of the Lord, and they prepared them. Faithfully they brought in the contributions, the tithes, and the dedicated things. The chief officer in charge of them was Conaniah the Levite, and his brother Shimei was as second. While Jehiel and Azahiah and Nahath and Azahel and Jeremoth and Jozabad and Eliel and Isamach and Mahath and Benaiah were overseers, assisting Conaniah and his brother Shimei by the appointment of the king Hezekiah and Azariah and the chief officer of the house of God. Korah, the son of Imnah the Levite, keeper of the east gate, was in charge of the freewill offerings to God, to apportion the contribution reserved for the Lord in the most holy offerings. Eden, Menahem, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah were faithfully assisting him in the cities of the priests to distribute the portions to their kindred, old and young alike, by divisions, except those enrolled by genealogy, males from 3 years old and upward, all who entered the house of the Lord, as the duty of each day required, for the service according to their offices by divisions. The enrollment of the priests was according to their ancestral houses, that the Levites from 20 years old and upward, according to their offices by the divisions, the priests were enrolled with their little children, their wives, their sons, their daughters, the whole multitude, and they were faithful in keeping themselves holy. And for the descendants of Aaron, the priests who were in the fields, the common land belonging to their towns, town by town, the people designated by name, were to distribute portions to every male among the priests and everyone among the Levites who was enrolled. Hezekiah did this throughout all Judah, and he did a good and right and faithful thing to the Lord his God. And every work that he undertook in the service of the house of God, in accordance with the law and the commandments, to seek his God, he did with all his heart, and he prospered. So notice how we're getting into the third chapter on Hezekiah. And if you remember, the last guy they dedicate multiple chapters to is Jehoshaphat, okay? The point that they're making is we've had a few good kings. And after Solomon's corruption, we basically have one, I think it's not King Ahaz, King Uzzah. I'm probably getting his name wrong. Then you're going to have King Jehoshaphat, and you're going to have King Hezekiah and King Josiah. They're good and everyone else sucks. So the ones who suck get like a chapter or less dedicated to them. And the ones who are good, they're going to dedicate multiple chapters to what they're doing, why they're good, because these are the things we're going to aspire to in the future. The things that pleased God. After these things and these acts of faithfulness, King Sennacherib of Syria came and invaded Judah and camped against all the fortified cities, thinking to win them for himself. So he's now taken all of Israel. Okay, those people who went back and destroyed their altars, where do you think they went when he invaded Israel? To Judah and Jerusalem. This is when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib would come up and intended to fight against Jerusalem. He planned with his officers and warriors to stop the flow of the springs that were outside the city, and they helped him. A great many people were gathered, and they stopped all the springs of the Wadi that flowed through the land, saying, "Why should the Assyrian kings come and find water in abundance?" Hezekiah set to work resolutely and built up the entire wall that was broken down and raised towers on it. Remember, it had been broken down in the days of his father. He raised towers on it and outside and built another wall, and he strengthened the Milo in the city of David and made weapons and shields in abundance. He appointed combat commanders over the people and gathered them together in the square of the gate of the city and spoke encouragingly to them, saying, "Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid or dismayed before the king of Assyria and all the horde that is with him, for there is one greater with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us fight our battles." The Lord our God, let's see how he says that. But with us is Yahweh our Elohim, our God. To help us fight our battles, and the people rested themselves upon the words of Hezekiah the king. After this did Sennacherib the king of Assyria send his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish, and all his power was with him, unto Hezekiah the king of Judah, and all Judah that were at Jerusalem, saying, "Thus saith Sennacherib king of Assyria, wherein do you trust, that you abide in the siege of Jerusalem? Doth not Hezekiah persuade you to give yourselves over to die by famine and thirst, saying, The Lord our God shall deliver us out of the hands of the king of Assyria?" Now remember, he's not just trusting in the Lord against Assyria. He's repented of all of his father's evil. He's been calling the people of Israel and Judah to repentance. And now that they've been doing the right thing, the king of Assyria is going up against them. Does it benefit you to walk in God's ways and trust and obey him? Let's see. Let's see how it goes down. So it's going to be bad. And in this context, you want to remember, I don't know if this is going to be in Chronicles, but it's in King. Hezekiah is dying. He's been told you're going to die in X amount of time. God's going to extend his life. Hath not the same Hezekiah taken away the high places and his altars and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, saying, You shall worship before one altar and burn incense on it? Know ye not what I and my fathers have done to the people of other lands? Were the gods of the nations of those lands able to deliver their lands out of my hand? Who was there among all the gods of those nations who that my father utterly destroyed, that could deliver his people out of mine hand, that your God shall be able to deliver you out of mine hand? Therefore let not Hezekiah deceive you, nor persuade you in this matter, neither yet believe him. For no God of any nation or kingdom was able to deliver him out of my hand and out of the hand of my fathers. How much less shall your God deliver out of my hand? This is so bad. Remember, it's going to be a couple generations earlier that God sanctifies Assyria to do all their butt kicking, because he is the instrument. They are the instrument of God's judgment, which he is foretelling by the prophets Jonah, Hosea, not really Obadiah, but Jonah, Hosea, and Joel. But within the context of those prophecies, God's like, but if you repent, I will turn that army away and I will drive it away. They've had prophets telling them this up to a century before it's happening, and now it's happening. Do they trust the word of God? If my people who are called by my name should humble themselves. Oh, that applies to us, not America. Let's see if it works. His servant spoke yet more against the Lord their God and against the servant Hezekiah. He wrote also letters to rail on the Lord God of Israel and to speak against him, saying, As the gods of other nations of other land not deliver the people out of my land, so shall not the God of Hezekiah deliver his people out of my land. You're calling me out, says Yahweh. Did he just step up did he just step to this? Then they cried with a loud voice in the Jews' speech unto the people of Jerusalem that were on the wall, to affright them and trouble them, that they might take the city. And they spake against the God of Jerusalem, against the gods of the people of the earth, which were the work of the hands of man. Oh, as against the... So you're treating Yahweh like he's just another idol. No. No, this ain't a dead ancestor. He ain't ever been dead. He's going to be dead in the future, but not yet. And for the cause Hezekiah the king, the prophet Isaiah the son of Amos prayed and cried to heaven, and the Lord sent an angel, which cut off the mighty men of valor and the leaders and the captains of the camp of the king of the Syrians. So he returned with shame of face to his own land. He actually returns to his own land and says, oh, Israel paid me off, so that's why I didn't destroy him. Tries to save face. Your army's a little bit smaller than when we left. Well, they're out enjoying the spoils. Are they, though? And then he gets killed. And when he was coming to the house of his God, they that came forth from his own bowels slew him there with a sword. So they knew he got his butt kicked. We need to get rid of this guy. And it looks like they had the kingdom of Urartu probably backing them in this assassination. Because the kingdom of Urartu had been, I think, recently subjugated by Assyria. And that's the people of Ararat. That's the Japhethites who are to their north. Thus the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, from the hand of all other, and guided them on every side. And many brought gift to the Lord at Jerusalem, and presents to the Hezekiah king of Judah. So he was magnified in the sight of all nations henceforth. In those days Hezekiah was sick to death, and he prayed to the Lord, and he spake unto him, and he gave him a sign. But Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done to him, for his heart was lifted up. Therefore was there wrath upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem. So what did he do? He rendered not again according to the benefit was done from him. Well, how did he do that? Well, it tells you how he did that. When the people of Babylon came to him, he showed off his treasures instead of showing off his God. That's what happened. Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself from the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah. So in other words, he acknowledged what he did was wrong. He acknowledged, but he had mostly done right all his life. But when the cool kids from Babylon came, because remember, they're fighting Assyria too, and Assyria has taken them over too, and they're now rebelling. And they're like, if Israel can do it, so can we. And he's like, well, yeah, because look, I got lots of money. Instead of going, no. If you don't follow my God, you don't have a prayer. It says, and Hezekiah had exceedingly much riches and honor, and he made himself treasures of silver and gold and precious stones for spices and for shields and for all manner of pleasant jewels, storehouses also for the increase of corn and wine and oil, and stalls for all manner of beasts and flocks. Moreover, he provided him cities and possessions and flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him substance very much. This same Hezekiah also stopped the upper watercourse of Gihon and brought it straight down on the west side of the city of David, and Hezekiah prospered in all his works. Howbeit, in the business of the ambassadors, the princes of Babylon, who sent to inquire of the wonder that was done in the land, God left him to try him, that he might know all that was in his heart. In other words, God backed off to see what he's going to do. How are you going to handle this? Now the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and all his goodness, behold, they are written in the vision of Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, and in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. And Hezekiah slept with his forefathers, and they buried him in the chiefest of the sepulchres of the sons of David, and all Judah and all the inhabitants of Judah did him honor at his death, and Manasseh his son reigned in his stead. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to take a little break. So Manasseh is the one who's real bad, but he's going to repent at the end. So it says, Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. But he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, like all the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. For he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had broke down, and he reared up altars for Baalim, and made groves, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. And my guess is that he's probably got nobles in his court who are talking him into doing this, because again, he's a little kid when he's starting, and he's got all these refugees from Israel there. And like I said, a lot of these people who come are going to be rich, but not necessarily repentant. So that's probably what you got going on there. And then he says, he built altars in the house of the Lord, whereof the Lord had said, in Jerusalem shall my name be forever. And again, some of this could be parents. It could be, who's his mom? Is she a foreigner, or who is she? So it says, and he built altars for all the host of heaven in the two courts of the Lord, house of the Lord. And he caused the children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. Also he observed time, and used enchantments, used witchcrafts, and dealt with a familiar spirit and with wizards. And he wrought much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. So he's doing what King Saul did here. He's got basically a Nephilim ghost telling him what some good ideas are. He set a carved image, the idol which he had made in the house of God, of which God had said to David and Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen before all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. So his grandfather is doing the dual thing with the altars in the front, but now he's actually putting an idol in the temple. He's stepping it up. This is a full-on prototype of the abomination of desolation going on. So he says, neither will I anymore remove the foot of Israel out of the land which I have appointed for your fathers, so that they will take heed to do all that I commanded for them, according to the whole law of the statutes and the ordinances by the hand of Moses. Oh, neither will I anymore remove the foot of Israel from out of the land. He said, so Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to err, and to do worse than the heathen whom the Lord had destroyed before the children of Israel. And the Lord spake to Manasseh and to his people, but they would not listen. He spoke to them. Therefore the Lord brought against them the commanders of the army of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh captive in manacles and bound him with fetters and brought him to Babylon. So they had just sacked Babylon. You remember the kings of Babylon came to them and were like, ooh, if you can rebel, we can rebel. Well, they try to rebel and they get their butts kicked. And he says, while he was in distress, he entreated the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his ancestors. So he's actually been taken captive. He's humbled himself. After he gets taken captive, he pays a bunch of tribute, and then I think he kind of becomes a tributary of these guys, but they actually do pretty good because the Assyrians they're able to sell all of these farm goods to Assyria, who are beating up on Babylon and these other areas, and that makes their farm goods more valuable, so they seem to do pretty good. While he was in distress, he entreated the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his ancestors. He prayed him, and God received his entreaty, heard his plea, and restored him again to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord indeed was God. So he went from being a young kid, being talked into following pagan gods. He goes into captivity, and then in his captivity, he recognizes that he's sinned against the true God, and he's repented. So we look at this and we mostly hear all the bad things he did, which are really bad, but you have to understand he has a grandfather that is doing those kinds of things, so he probably has relatives that are down with that, and then he's probably got nobles that are down with that, and he's just a 12-year-old kid. When he gets humbled by God, he repents. He receives the humility and repents. And he says, afterwards he built an outer wall for the city of David west of Gihon in the valley, reaching to the entrance of the fish gate. He carried it around Ophel and raised it to a very great height. The commanders of the army, he also put commanders of the army in the fortified cities of Judah. He also took away the foreign gods and the idol from the house of God and all the altars that he built in the mountain of the house of God in Jerusalem, and he threw them out of the city. He also restored the altar of the Lord and offered on it sacrifices of peace and thanksgiving. And he commanded Judah to serve the Lord God of Israel. The people, however, still sacrifice at the high places, but only to the Lord their God. So they're using a pagan means of worship, but worshiping only Yahweh on those pagan high places. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh, his prayer to God and the words of the seers who spoke to him in the name of the Lord the God of Israel, these are in the annals of the kings of Israel. So he is supposedly the one who kills Isaiah by having him sawn into in a log. But if he did that, he's probably just a kid, like a teenager maybe, when he does that. Because Isaiah would have been very old by the time he took the throne, like 80s or 90s. So if he did that, it would have been in his very old age when he was a young, maybe preteen even, and it's probably under the counsel of others. So he says his prayer and how God received his entreaty, all his sin and his faithfulness, the sites on which he built the high places and set up sacred poles and images, and before he humbled himself, these are written in the records of the seers. So again, the records of the seers are what are ultimately going to become the Book of Kings. So Manasseh slept with his ancestors, and they buried him in his house. His son Ammon received him, and Ammon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his father Manasseh had done. Ammon sacrificed to all the images his father Manasseh had made and served them. So what is he doing? Going in the Kidron Valley into the garbage dump and pulling these things back out? I don't know. He did not humble himself before the Lord as his father Manasseh had humbled himself, but Ammon incurred more and more guilt. His servants conspired against him and killed him in his house. So he gets assassinated. He's the first one to get assassinated in like five, 6 generations. But the people of the land killed those who had conspired against King Ammon, and the people made his son Josiah king to succeed him. So again, you listen to the ages of these people when they're taking the throne. 16, 12, 22, and now 8. This is how unstable their government is. They always have a kid on the throne. 16, 12, even 22 is a kid. I mean, Solomon was probably that young when he began to reign, but he was also, raised under a mature king in his old age, so he would have been prepared for it somewhat. And he had good priests and prophets and generals and stuff like that around him. But it's just like, it just keeps getting worse. You have these kids on the throne. You have the 6-year-old because they all get assassinated. Now we have an 8-year-old. So he says he did what was right in the sight of the Lord. He walked in the ways of his ancestor David. He did not turn aside to the right or the left. From the 8th year of his reign, so he's still 16, he was still a boy. He began to seek the God of his ancestor David. And in the 12th year, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem, the high places, and the sacred poles, and the carved and the cast images. So his dad's dead, and he's seeking the Lord. He's probably got a priest counseling him or something. But he's a 16-year-old kid. He was like, I'm going to seek the Lord of my ancestors. And in his presence, they pulled down the altars of the Baals and demolished the incense altars that stood above them. He broke down the sacred poles and carved and cast images. He made dust of them and scattered it over the graves of those who had sacrificed them. He also burned down the priests on their altars and purged Judah and Jerusalem. In the towns of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, as far as Naphtali, and all the ruins all around, he broke down the altars, beat the sacred poles and the images to power, and demolished all the incense altars around the lands of Israel. Then he returned to Jerusalem. So he is going to actually fulfill the prophecy. I don't know if they account that here, but they do account it in the book of Kings that is prophesies him by name. A prophet prophesies him by name that he's going to ultimately destroy the golden calves of Jeroboam, and he fulfills that. This says in the 18th year of his reign, so he's still just a 26-year-old kid. When he had purged the land of these, he sent Shaphan to the house of Azaliah and Messiah, the governor of the city, and Joah, the son of Jehoaz, the recorder, to repair the house of the Lord his God. They came to the high priest of Hilkiah and delivered the money that had brought to the house of the God, which the Levites, the keepers of the threshold, had collected from Manasseh and Ephraim and all the remnant of Israel, and all of Judah and Benjamin from all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They delivered it to the workers that had the oversight of the house of the Lord, and the workers who were working in the house of the Lord gave it for repairing and restoring the house. They gave it to carpenters and builders, and they to buy quarried stone and timber for binders and beams for the building that the Lord God had that the kings of Judah had let go to ruin. Because remember, they collected all this money for it in the days of Joash, but then that money they give to Ahaz gives to the king of Syria, so they haven't been taking care of it for years. The people did work faithfully. Over them was appointed the Levites, Jahath and Obadiah, the sons of Merari, along with Zechariah and Meshullam, the sons of the Kohathites, to have oversights, the Levites, the skilled, and the skillful with instruments of music. Now we know in the days of Hezekiah, they're following the law, they're following the Passover, and that's why they're making note of the fact that the Levites aren't being sanctified properly, and they're not doing the Passover the way they should, and yet they're doing it. So we know they're reading the law back then. But Hezekiah is succeeded by Manasseh. So Hezekiah is going to live like another, let's say, 20 years after that. And then Manasseh is going to be like 50 years after that. So 70 years out. And then Ammon is going to be 2 years after that. And now we're in Josiah's 8th to 10th year. So it's been like 80 years. It's not like the law has been lost forever. But it has not been in use since Hezekiah died, so it could be anywhere between 50, 60 years that anyone's really been reading the law. And remember, you've got people putting pagan stuff on the altars, which means the Levites are either leaving the temple or kicked out. So it says, let's see, to have oversight, other Levites, all skillful with instruments of music, were over the burden bearers and directed all who did work of every kind of service, and some of the Levites were scribes and officials and gatekeepers. While they were bringing out the money that had brought into the house of the Lord, the priest Hilkiah found the book of the law the Lord had given to Moses. And Hilkiah said to the secretary Shaphan, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord, which Hilkiah gave to Shaphan. And Shaphan brought the book to the king, and further reported to the king all that was committed of your servants they are doing. They have emptied out the money that was found in the house of the Lord, and have delivered it in the hands of the overseers and the workers. The secretary Shaphan informed the king, the priest Hilkiah has given me a book. And Shaphan then read it aloud to the king. When the king heard the words of the law, he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah, Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, and Abdon, the son of Micah, the secretary of Shaphan, and the king's servant Asaiah, said, "Go inquire for me and for those who are left in Israel and Judah concerning the words of the book that has been found, for the wrath of the Lord that is poured out on us is great, because our ancestors did not keep the word of the Lord and act in accordance with all that is written in this book." So he's a young guy, pretty pure of heart. He's in his mid-20s now, and he's hearing the law for the first time. And he's like, part of what was said from the time of David is have the law be read before your kings on the regular. And he's hearing it, and he's like, we have not been doing this. We are really bad. Now, he knows what his ancestors have done, his immediate ancestors, all the idolatry. And he's now heard the whole law from Genesis to Deuteronomy. And he's like, we're like the opposite of everything God told us to do and be. So he's renting his clothes. So Hilkiah and those who the king had sent to the prophet Huldah, it's a prophetess, Huldah, the wife of Shallum, son of Tokath, son of Harash, keeper of the wardrobe. So she's basically in charge of the royal clothes, who lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter, and spoke to her to that effect. She declared to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, tell the man who sent you to me, thus saith the Lord, I will indeed bring disaster upon this place and on its inhabitants, all the curses that are written in the book that was read before King Judah." So there's proof that women should be pastors, because a woman said something to a man. There you go. So we just erased those verses that say women are not to be an authority over men, because a woman said something to a man in the name of the Lord. So therefore, all the stuff that was said by apostles is bullcrap, and we should now listen to Joyce Meyer. Because they have forsaken me, and I have made offerings to other gods, so that they have provoked me to anger with all the works of their hands, my wrath will be poured out in this place, and will not be quenched. But as to the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, thus shall you say to him, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, regarding the words that you have heard. Because your heart was penitent, and you have humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against the places and its inhabitants, you have humbled yourself before me, and have torn your clothes and wept before me. I have also heard you, says the Lord. I will gather you to your ancestors. You will be gathered to your grave in peace. Your eyes shall not see the disaster that I will bring in this place and its inhabitants. They took the message back to the king. The king sent word and gathered together all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. The king went up to the house of the Lord with all the people of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the priests and Levites, and all the people great and small, and had their head in the rearing, and all the words of their book and their covenant had been found in the house of the Lord. The king stood in his palace and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord, keeping his commandments and decrees and his statutes, and all his heart and all his soul to perform the words of all the covenant that were written in this book. Then he made all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin pledge themselves to it, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem acted according to the covenant of God, the God of their ancestors. Josiah took away all the abominations from the territory that belonged to the people of Israel, and made all who were in Israel worship the Lord their God, and all this they did not turn away from following the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Many a revival, say yea. Okay, the problem is God's already like your toast. I said you were toast in the days of Manasseh, and I've got a schedule to keep. So what is he going to do? We'll see. Josiah kept the Passover to the Lord in Jerusalem, and they slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the first month, and he appointed the priests for their office and encouraged them in the service of the house of the Lord. And he said to the Levites who taught in all Israel and who were holy to the Lord, put the holy ark in the house of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, built. You need to no longer carry it on your shoulders. Now serve the Lord your God and his people Israel. Make preparations by your ancestral houses and your divisions according to the written directions of King David, the house of Israel, and the written directions of Solomon. Take position to the holy place according to the groupings of your ancestral houses and your kindred, the people, and let there be Levites for each division of the ancestral house. Slaughter the Passover lamb, sanctify yourselves, and on behalf of your kindred make preparations for acting according to the word of the Lord by Moses. Then Josiah contributed the number of the Passover offerings and all that were present, lambs and kids from the flock, and the number of 30,000 and 3,000 bulls, and these were from the king's possessions. His officials contributed willingly to the people and to the priests and the Levites. Hilkiah, Zechariah, and Jehiel, the chief officers of the house of God, gave to the priests the Passover offerings, 2,600 lambs and kids, and 300 bulls. Coniah also, and his brothers Shemaiah and Nethaniel and Hashabiah and Jael and Jozabad, the chiefs of the Levites, gave to the Levites the Passover offerings, 5,000 lambs and kids, 500 bulls. When the service had been prepared for, the priests stood in their palace, and the Levites in their divisions according to the king's command. They slaughtered the Passover lamb, and the priests dashed the blood that they received from while the Levites did the skinning, and they set aside the burnt offering so that they might distribute it according to the groupings of the ancestral houses of the people, to offer to the Lord as is written in the book of Moses. And they did the same with the bulls. They roasted the Passover lamb in the fire according to the ordinance, and they boiled the holy offerings in pots and cauldrons and in pans, and carried them quickly to all the people. Afterward, they made preparations for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the descendants of Aaron, were occupied in burnt offerings and the fat parts until night. And the Levites made preparations for themselves and for the priests, the descendants of Aaron. You see how they want to keep reminding you that the priests are the descendants of Aaron, just so you don't forget? The singers and the descendants of Asaph, it's because those Israelites just put any old bum on in office. The priests, the descendants of Asaph, were in the place according to the command of David, and Asaph and Heman, and the king's seer Jeduthun. And the gatekeepers were at each gate, and they did not need to interrupt their service, for the kindred of the Levites made preparations for them. So all the service of the Lord was prepared that day, and to keep the Passover and to the burnt offerings in the altar of the Lord, according to the command of King Josiah. And the people of Israel who were present to keep the Passover at that time of that festival of unleavened bread 7 days. The people who were. No Passover like it had been kept in Israel since the days of the prophet Samuel. None of the kings of Israel had kept such a Passover as was kept by Josiah and the priests and the Levites. All of Judah and Israel were present, and all of the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Remember how people mocked him when they tried to do it before? Now everyone's just like, remember how you mocked them under Hezekiah when he tried to do this? And now where's Israel? Oh, they're no more. Yeah, maybe you need to listen this time. In the 18th year of the reign of Josiah, this Passover was kept. So now again, he's 18th. He's 26 years old. After all this, when Josiah had set the temple in order, King Necho of Egypt went up to fight at Carchemish on the Euphrates, and Josiah went out against him. He's only 26 years old, y'all. But Necho sent envoys to him, saying, "What have I to do with you, the king of Judah? I am not coming against you today, but against his house, with which I am at war, and God has commanded me to hurry. Cease opposing God who is with me, so that he will not destroy you." Now, he believes God is sending him up to do this. I don't know if God is, but he thinks God is. Because he's going to go up, and he's trying to aid Assyria against Babylon. He's trying to take Carchemish, and he's going to lose. So, is God really with him? Did Josiah disrupt God's plans, or did he just think God is with him? Okay, again, when he says God, he says, he's not saying Yahweh, he is saying Elohim. So is it the God, or is it a God? Commanded him. So he says, and the archers shot at King Josiah. Nevertheless, Josiah would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself that he might fight with him, and hearkened not to the words. Why did he disguise himself? Not to the words of Necho from the mouth. Oh, it says, of the Necho from the mouth of God, and came to fight in the valley of Megiddo. So apparently it is God who's sending him up. This is curious. And the archer shot at King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, "Have me away, for I am sore wounded." This hurts. His servants therefore took him out of the chariot and put him in the second chariot he had, and they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died, and he was buried in one of the sepulchres of his fathers. And all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. He was a good guy, but he's a 26-year-old kid yet. And Jeremiah lamented for Josiah, and all the singing men and the singing women spake of Josiah in their lamentations to this day, and made them an ordinance in Israel. And behold, they are written in the Lamentations. They are written in the Lamentations. I don't know if I ever read Lamentations when I did Jeremiah, so I might have to do it when Jerusalem is destroyed this time. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and his goodness according to all that was written in the law of the Lord, and his deeds first and last, behold, they are written in the kings of Israel and Judah. The book of the kings of Israel and Judah. I expect, because Israel is now gone, that the book of the kings of Israel and Judah they're referring to is the book of Kings. The finished book of Kings. Because notice they keep referring to different books, and now they'd say the Annals of Judah or the Annals of Israel. Now it's saying the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. It seems like that is fully compiled, and that is their main reference going forward. So it says, then the people of the land took Jehoaz the son of Josiah and made him king in his father's stead. And Jehoaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. Now, here's something that doesn't add up. His dad's 26. He didn't have him when he was 3. So did we have a mistake here? Let's look. Both testimonies say he was 8 years old when he began to reign. Both say he was 8 years old when he began to reign. And now they're saying his son is 23 when he begins to reign, when he's 26 when he dies, if he dies in the 18th year of his reign. Something doesn't add up here. He did not have a kid when he was 3. So who is this? Joahaz, the son of Josiah. He's 23 years old. Let's see when it says how. Joahaz was 23 years old when he ran to reign. He reigned 3 months in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamatul. So how is this going to work? In the 18th year of King Josiah. So here it just says, in his days, Pharaoh Necho. So it says the rest of the acts that it did. It doesn't say how many years he ruled. So in 1 Kings he says, in 2 Kings, he said, he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. So there's a recording error there. So he's actually 39 when he dies. So if we're looking at 2 Chronicles 35, he does say 31 years he reigned. It just says after all this. So it's not meant to say like right after this. It's meant to say like at the end of his reign. So we have 18 years, he's 26, and it's 13 years later that this happens, okay? So that makes sense. Okay, so he's 39, and he has a 23-year-old kid, which means he had a kid when he was 16. Let's see, he was 23 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And the king of Egypt put him down in Jerusalem and condemned the land to 100 talents of silver and 100 talents of gold. So he takes their king, makes him pay tribute, goes back to Egypt with a sore butt. And the king of Egypt made Eliakim his brother king of Jerusalem and turned his name to Jehoiakim. And Necho took Jehoaz his brother and carried him to Egypt. So Jehoaz is now captive. Jehoiakim is now king. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. So let's look at that. Apparently, Jehoaz is put on the throne over Jehoiakim, even though he's younger. Jehoiakim, so he's only reigning 3 months, and then Pharaoh Necho is going to put the older brother in. So why did they pick the younger brother? Probably because it was his father's will, like with Solomon, that one is in charge. They seem to keep picking the younger king so they'd have longer reigns. Jehoiakim is 25 years old, and he's going to reign 11 years, so he's going to reign till he's 36. I want you to look at this. The majority of their kings are younger than me when they die. I am not that old. They're not making it that long. I mean, the best of them are just like this guy starting when he was 18, he reigned 50 years, and he's like, okay, 68. That's the best of them. Most of these guys are dead under 60. He said, against him came up Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and bound him in fetters and carried him to Babylon. So what does he do? He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. You want more details? Go read the book of Kings. They're referring to the book of Kings. They know it's going to be in the scriptures. They're not just trying to copy everything that's in it. Nebuchadnezzar also carried away the vessels of the house of the Lord of Babylon and put them in his temple at Babylon. So if the Ark of the Covenant is not in Israel, because remember, Israel sacks them and takes all the vessels. Now Nebuchadnezzar's going to sack them and take all the vessels. Someone's taken the Ark of the Covenant. It's been taken by force. Nobody hit it. I'm sorry, this thing is gone. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and his abominations that he did, they're not going to take all the golden vessels and leave the golden box behind. And that which was found in him, they're written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah, and Jehoiakim his son reigned in his stead. So they're very much truncating what's in the book of Kings. They're just like, we're just getting to the end of this now. You know what happened. You read the book of Kings. Jehoiakim was 8 years old when he began to reign. So this is the father of this guy. Or I'm sorry, the son of this guy who's 25. He apparently had a kid when he was 17, and that kid's now on the throne, another 8-year-old. And he reigned 3 months and 10 years. So the 8-year-old has to be right. The other one says 18 years old. But if it was 18 years old, that would mean he had a kid when he was 7, and he might have been a manly man, but I doubt it. So it seems like he is 8. But here's the thing. He reigns 3 months and 10 days, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. What did he do that was so wrong? Well, he's 8. But, he's evil like his dad. And when the year was expired, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babylon with the godly vessels of the house of the Lord, and made Zedekiah his brother king over Judah and Jerusalem. And Zedekiah is, I believe, Jehoiakim's brother, not Jehoiachin's brother. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. The reason I say he's Jehoiakim, Jehoaz, and Zedekiah are the three brothers. It's because he's 21 and this dude had to have been 8. He couldn't have been 18. Because if he was 18, that wouldn't make sense. Because it's Paul. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He could be 18. Because Jehoiachin, this guy is 25 when he gets to reign, and he reigns for 11 years. That makes him 36. So he could have an 18-year-old kid, faux show. Could he have a 25-year-old kid as well? I doubt it. Unless he had a kid when he was like 11. I don't think he did. So I think Zedekiah is going to be the brother of him. So he says, and he brought him to Babylon with the goodly fetters of the house of the Lord, made Zedekiah's brother king in Judah over Jerusalem. And Zedekiah was 21 years old, and when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did that with that which was evil. So he is 21. This would have been the little brother of this guy. So he's 36. He's got a 21-year-old brother. That makes much more sense. And I believe they have the same mother. If you read in 1 Kings, it tells you who their mother is. It's interesting how some people here, they make a note of who their mother is here, and others they make the note in 1 Kings, and they don't necessarily do it the same in both. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and he humbled not himself before Jeremiah the prophet, speaking from the mouth of the Lord. So Jeremiah has been talking crap to all these boys, all Josiah's boys, the whole time. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by God, but he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart, betraying the Lord by Israel. If you swear by God, what happened when you had these people in Gibeah and you swore by God? You had to keep your oath. You swore by God to serve the king of Jerusalem, or the king of Babylon. So he said, moreover, the chiefs and the priests and the people transgressed very much after all the abominations of the heathen, and polluted the house of the Lord, which he had hallowed in Jerusalem. And the Lord, the God of his fathers, sent by them his messengers, rising up betimes. Betimes, you guys. What does that mean? It means a lot. Persistently by his messengers, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they kept mocking the messengers of God, despising his words, and scoffing at the prophets, until the wrath of God against his people became so great there was no remedy. Just like what Jesus said about him. Therefore he brought up against them the king of the Chaldeans, who killed their youths with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion on young man or young woman, and the aged and the feeble, and gave them all into his hand. All the vessels of the house of God, large and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and his officials, all these he brought to Babylon. They burned the house of God, broke down the wall of Jerusalem, burned its palaces with fire, and destroyed all its precious vessels. He took into exile Babylon, who had escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him, and to his servants, to his sons, until the establishment of the king of Persia, to fulfill the words of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had made up for its Sabbath. And the days it lay desolate, it kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. So the 70 years of it laying desolate, they're talking about the temple. So notice it says they burned down, God broke down the wall of Jerusalem. So it is Jerusalem too, because it's not till after the temple's rebuilt that the wall is rebuilt. But the actual period of 70 years is fulfilled in the destruction of the temple to its rebuilding. It's 587 BCE that it's destroyed, and it's 518. So almost exactly 70 years that they rebuild it. It's not great, and then Nehemiah is going to come in after that and rebuild the wall. Not immediately after that either. I think might be decades after that. Anyways, in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, in fulfillment of the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord stirred up by the spirit of King Cyrus of Persia, so that he sent a herald throughout all his kingdom, and declared in a written edict, Thus saith King Cyrus of Persia, The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judea. Whoever is among you of this people, may the Lord his God be with him. Let him go up. So remember, you've got certain Jews who are making a big deal about Trump being this Cyrus, and they're projecting that Trump's going to help them build the temple. Well, that's what they want. Is that what God's going to allow to happen? We'll see. That is not something specifically stated that the Antichrist would do, but in Scripture. But the early church fathers believed that the Antichrist would do that. They know the temple would have to be written or rebuilt, and they conjecture that the Antichrist is going to be the one to rebuild it, which is feasible. It makes sense, or at least giving them permission to rebuild it would be part of probably the 7-year covenant that he makes. And we're going to see in Daniel that there's 2,300 days that's desolate, which is less than 7 years. So that would make sense if that's the time to rebuild the temple as well. So we'll see. But we've got a few things to cover here. And then I'm going to read Lamentations. So notice he says he takes them away to Babylon, and he makes Zedekiah king. So this is 11 years prior to its destruction. So you're looking at roughly 598 BC. Okay? That's when we're starting Daniel. Ezekiel is also going to be exiled around that time, but that's not when he starts. Ezekiel is going to start 5 years later. Okay? So Ezekiel's going to start 5 years later, but by that time, Daniel is known as a famous righteous guy. So the Daniel stuff has happened, and probably the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stuff has happened. So we're going to cover those parts, and then we're going to jump back to Ezekiel. As far as what went down here, they're skipping over this 70-year period, and within that period, within that period, all of Daniel's going to happen, all of Ezekiel's going to happen, and Esther is not happening yet. Esther is actually going to happen within the book of Ezra, because Ahasuerus is actually it's not a lot of years after Cyrus. It's only I want to say less than 5 years, but it's 5 kings later because there's a bunch of overthrows. Then you have Darius the Mede, and then Darius the Great, and then Xerxes. Ahasuerus is Xerxes. Okay, so this is leading you right exactly into Ezra. But before we get to Ezra, we need to read these two very important prophets who are going to prophesy between that, because their prophecies are all about the first and second coming of Christ. And we need to read it. We're going to basically have Isaiah already has the first and second coming of Christ and the millennium in his prophecies very clearly. Joel less clearly, but they're there. Micah less clearly, but it's there. Isaiah pretty clearly. And then that stuff is going to be split between Ezekiel and Daniel, whereas Daniel is going to talk about Christ's first coming and then skip to the 70th week in the Antichrist and not mention the millennium and not really mention his second coming. Ezekiel is going to mention his... he's not going to mention his first coming at all, but he's going to mention the wars leading up to Daniel's 70th week and then the millennium. So you want to look at Ezekiel and Daniel as meant to be read as a pair. They're both part of these prophets in exile. One's from the line of Aaron and one's from the line of David. So they're both very important as a pair. We are going to go to Lamentations, which I forgot to read before. I want to read about Jeremiah crying over the city after it's been destroyed. It says, "How lonely sits the city that was once full of people. How like a widow she has become that was great among the nations. She was a princess among the provinces. She that was princess among the provinces has become a vassal." 5 chapters. "She weeps bitterly in the night, with tears in her cheeks. Among all her lovers she has no one to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. Judah has gone into exile with suffering and hard servitude. She lives now among the nations, finds no resting place. Her pursuers have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. The roads to Zion mourn, for there no one comes to the festivals. All her gates are desolate, her priests groan, her young girls grieve, her lot is bitter. Her foes have become the masters of her enemies. Her enemies prosper because the Lord has made her suffer for the multitude of her transgressions. Her children have gone away, captives before the foe. From daughter Zion has departed all her majesty. Her princes have become like stags that find no pasture. They fled without strength before the pursuer. Jerusalem remembers in the days of her affliction and wandering all the precious things that were hers in the days of old. When her people fell into the hand of the foe and there was none to help her, the foe looked on mocking over her downfall. Jerusalem sinned grievously so that she has become a mockery. All who honored her despise her. for they have seen her nakedness. She herself groans and turns away her face. Her uncleanness was in her skirts, and she took no thought of her future. Her downfall was appalling, and with no one to comfort her. O Lord, look at my affliction, for the enemy has triumphed. Enemies have stretched out their hands over all the precious things. She has even seen the nations invade her sanctuary, those who you forbade to enter into your congregation. So those who you forbade are going to be the Moabites and the Edomites and guys like that. All her people groan as they search for bread. They trade their treasures for food to revive their strength. O Lord, see how worthless I have become. Look, O Lord, and see how worthless I have become. So when Nebuchadnezzar is going to besiege them and destroy them, he's going to invite Edomites and people like that to help. And they're like, we love killing Jews. Is it nothing to you, all who pass by? Look and see if there is any sorrow like my sorrow, which is brought upon me, which the Lord has inflicted on the day of his fierce anger. Let's see. From on high he sent fire, it went deep into my bones. He spread my net for my feet. He turned back, he has left me stunned, fainted all day long. My transgressions were bound into a yoke. By his hand they were fastened together. They weigh on my neck, sapping my strength. The Lord handed me over to those whom I cannot withstand. The Lord has rejected all my warriors in the midst of me. He proclaimed a time against me to crush my young men. The Lord has trodden as in a winepress the virgin daughter of Judah. Message. See, he has trodden as in a winepress the virgin daughter of Judah. So think about when he's troddening the winepress. Well, he is going to trodden the Gentiles in that winepress. But this is the Jews troddening. For these things I weep, my eyes flow with tears, for a comforter is far from me, one to revive my courage. My children are desolate, for the enemy has prevailed. Zion stretches out her hands, but there is no one to comfort her. The Lord has commanded against Jacob that his neighbors should become his foes. Jerusalem has become filthy among them. The Lord is in the right, for I have rebelled against his word. But hear, all you peoples, and behold my suffering. My young women and my young men have gone into captivity. So Jeremiah is prophesying this song as if he is Jerusalem. I called to my lovers, but they deceived me. My priests and the elders perished in the city while seeking food to revive their strength. See, O Lord, how distressed I am, how my stomach churns, my heart is wrung within me, because I have been very rebellious. In the street the sword bereaves. In the house it is like death. They heard how I was groaning with no one to comfort me. All my enemies heard of my trouble. They are glad that you have done it. Bring on the day you have announced, and let it be as I am. Let all their evil doings come before you, and deal with them as you have dealt with me, because of all my transgressions, for my groans are many and faint in heart. So notice he's saying, Jerusalem is saying, I deserve what I got, now give the Gentiles what they deserve. They're going to get their winepress later. How the Lord in his anger has humiliated daughter Zion. He has thrown down from heaven to earth the splendor of Israel. He has not remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. The Lord has destroyed without mercy the dwellings of Jacob. In his wrath he has broken down the strongholds of daughter Judah. He has brought down the ground in dishonor, and the kingdom and its rulers. He has cut down in fierce anger like all the might of Israel. He has withdrawn his right hand from them in the face of the enemy. He has burned like the flaming fire in Jacob, consuming all around. So who's his right hand? That's Yahweh. That's the visible Lord. He's withdrawn. He's no longer protecting Jerusalem. He leaves. He has bent his bow like an enemy, with his right hand set like a foe. He has killed all in whom we took pride in the tent of the daughter of Zion. He is poured out like fury, like fire. The Lord has become like an enemy. He has destroyed Israel. He has destroyed all its palaces, laid ruin its strongholds, and multiplied in daughter Judah mourning and lamentation. He has broken down his booth like a garden. He has destroyed his tabernacle. The Lord has abolished in Zion festival and Sabbath. In his fierce indignation he has spurned king and priest. So his booth or his tabernacle is the temple. The Lord has scorned his altar, disowned his sanctuary, has delivered it into the hands of the enemy and the walls of her palaces. The clamor was raised in the house of the Lord as on the day of festival. The Lord determined to lay in ruins the wall of the daughter of Zion. He stretched the line. He did not withhold his hand from destroying. He caused the rampart and the wall to lament. They languished together. Her gates have sunk into the ground. He has ruined and broken her bars. The king and the princes are among the nations. Guidance is no more, and her prophets obtain no vision from the Lord. Jeremiah's last one. The elders of the daughter of Zion sit in the ground in silence. They have thrown dust on their heads and put on sackcloth. The young girls in Jerusalem have their heads to the ground. These are really long chapters, just so you know. My eyes are spent with weeping, my stomach churns, my bile is poured out on the ground because of the destruction of my people, because of the infants and the babes found in the streets of the city. They cry to their mothers, where is the bread and wine? And they are faint like the wounded in the streets of the city, and their life is poured on their mother's bosom. What can I say for you to compare you, O daughter of Jerusalem? To what can I liken you that I may comfort you, O virgin daughter Zion? For vast as the sea is your ruin, who can heal you? Your prophets have seen for you for false and deceptive visions. They have not exposed your iniquity to restore your fortunes, but I have seen oracles for you that are false. But have seen oracles for you that are false and misleading. If the prophets aren't rebuking your sin, they're probably false prophets, because you're usually sinning. All who pass by along the way clap their hands at you. They sit, hiss, and wag their heads at daughter Jerusalem. Is this the city that was called the perfection of beauty, the joy of the earth? All your enemies open their mouths against you. They hiss, they gnash their teeth. They cry, we have devoured her. Ah, this is the day we long for. At last we have seen it. The Lord has done what he purposed. He has carried out his threat, as he ordained long ago. He has demolished without pity. He has made the enemy rejoice over you and exult in the midst of your foes. Cry aloud to the Lord, O daughter of the people of Zion. Let tears stream down like a torrent day and night. Give yourself no rest and your eyes no respite. Arise, cry out in the night at the beginning of your watches. Pour out your heart like water before the presence of the Lord. Lift your hands from him, the lives of your children who faint in hunger at the head of the street. Look, O Lord, and consider, to whom have you done this? Should women eat their offspring, the children they have born? So they're actually eating their babies, their afterbirths and stuff like that. Should priest and prophet be killed in the sanctuary of the Lord? The young and old are lying in the ground in the streets. My young women and my young men have fallen by the sword. In the day of your anger, you have killed them, slaughtering without mercy. You invited my enemies from all around, as if for a day of festival. And on the day of your anger, Lord, no one escaped or survived. Those whom I bore and reared, my enemy has destroyed. I am one who has seen affliction under the rod of God's wrath, and he has driven and brought me into darkness without any light. Against me, he alone he turns his hand again and again all day long. He has made my flesh and my skin to waste away and has broken my bones. He has besieged and enveloped me with bitterness and tribulation. He has made me sit in darkness like the dead of long ago. He has walled me about so that I cannot escape. He has put heavy chains on me. Though I call and cry for help, he shuts out my prayer. He has blocked my ways with huge stones. He has made my paths crooked. He is a bear lying wait for me, a lion in hiding. He led me off my way and tore me to pieces. He has made me desolate. He bent his bow and set me as a mark for the arrow. He shot into my vitals the arrow of the quiver. I have become a laughing stock to all my people, the object of their taunt songs all day long. He has filled me with bitterness. He has sated me with wormwood. He has made my teeth grind on gravel. He has made me cower in ashes. My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. So I say, gone is my glory and all that I had hoped for from the Lord. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks of it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. I used to sing a praise and worship song with that in it. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. God's mercies are new every morning. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good for those who wait on him, the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for one to bear the yoke in youth, to sit alone in silence when the Lord has imposed it, to put one's mouth to the dust that there may be hope, to give one's cheek to the smiter and be filled with insults, for the Lord will not reject forever. In other words, when you are humbled and humiliated, think of your own sins and be quiet. This is something that we do not want to do, especially as proud, free, rich Americans. How dare you, I have rights. And what if God is saying, I am humbling you for your sins, and your job is to be silent and take it and wait on the Lord to vindicate you rather than vindicating yourself. Although he causes grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love, for he does not willingly afflict or grieve anybody. When all the prisoners in the land are crushed underfoot, when human rights are perverted in the presence of the Most High, when one's cave is subverted, does the Lord not see it? One's case is subverted, does the Lord not see it? Who can command who can command and have done it if not the Lord had ordained it? So in other words, these guys are taking you down and beating you up. Wait a minute, didn't God send Assyria? Maybe he's sending Babylon too. Maybe you need to humble yourself like Israel should have humbled themselves. Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that good and bad come? Why should any who draw breath complain about the punishment of their sins? Let us test and examine our ways and return to the Lord. Let us lift up our hearts as well as our hands to God in heaven. We have transgressed and rebelled, and you have not forgiven. You have wrapped yourself with anger and pursued us, killing without pity. You have wrapped yourself with a cloud so that no prayer can pass through. You have made us filth and rubbish among the peoples. All our many enemies have opened their mouths against us. Panic and pitfall have come upon us, devastation and destruction. My eyes flow with rivers of tears in the destruction of my people. My eyes will flow without ceasing, without respite, until the Lord from heaven looks down and sees. My eyes cause me grief at the fate of the young men and women of the city. Those who were my enemies without cause have hunted me like a bird. They flung me alive into a pit and hurled stones at me. Water closed over my head. I said, I am lost. This is kind of stuff that's actually happening to Jeremiah. I called on your name, the Lord, from the depths of the pit. You heard my plea. Do not close your ear to my cry for help, but give me relief. You came near when I called you, and you said, do not fear. You have taken up my cause, O Lord. You have redeemed my life. You have seen no wrong done to me. You have seen the wrong done to me, O Lord. Judge my cause. You have seen all their malice, all their plots against me. You have heard their taunts, O Lord, and their plots against me. The whispers and murmurs of my assailants are against me all day long. Whether they sit or rise, I am the object of their taunt songs. Pay them back for their deeds, O Lord, according to the works of their hands. Give them anguish of heart. Your curse be upon them. Pursue them in anger and destroy them under the Lord's heavens. Now think about the parallel here. You've got Jeremiah set into a pit, and then he's taken out of the pit, kind of like the death and resurrection of Christ, and afterwards Jerusalem is destroyed. He's a foretype of Christ. And he's kind of prophesying as if he's a foretype of Christ. Let's see, chapter 4, how the gold has grown dim and how the pure gold has changed. The sacred stones lie scattered in the head of every street. The precious children of Zion, worth their weight in fine gold, how they are reckoned as earth pots, the work of potter's hands. Even the jackals offer the breast and nurse their young, but my people have become cruel like ostriches in the wilderness. Remember, an ostrich is stupid and it's going to leave its egg behind and step on it. The tongue of the infant sticks to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The children beg for food, but no one gives them anything. Those who feast on delicacies perish in the streets. Those who are brought up in purple cling to ash heaps. For the chastisement of my people has been greater than the punishment of Sodom, which was overthrown in a moment and though no hand was laid on it. Her princes were purer than snow, whiter than milk. Their bodies were more ruddy than coral, their hair like sapphire. Now their visage is blacker than soot, and they are not recognized in the street. Their skin is shriveled on their bones, and they become dry as wood. Proof that the true Jews were white. White people. Caucasians. No, they're talking about them being clean versus dirty. Happier were those pierced by the sword than those who are pierced by hunger, whose life drains away, deprived of the produce of the field. The hands of compassionate women have boiled their own children. They have become food in the destruction of my people. The Lord gave full vent to his wrath and poured out his hot anger and kindled the fire in Zion that consumed its foundations. The kings of the earth did not believe, nor did any inhabitants of the world that foe or enemy could enter in the gates of Jerusalem. It was for the sins of her prophets and their iniquities of her priests who shed blood of the righteous in the midst of her. Blindly they wandered through the streets, so defiled with blood that no one was able to touch her garments. Away, unclean, people shouted at them. Away, away, do not touch. So they became fugitives and wanderers, and it was said among the nations, they shall stay here no longer. Fugitives and wanderers, remember, those are the prophets, men of whom this world is not worthy. That's in Hebrews chapter 11. The Lord himself has scattered them. He will regard them no more. No honor is shown to the priests, nor favor to the elders. Our eyes failed, ever watching vainly for help. We were watching eagerly for a nation that could not save. They dogged our steps so that we could not walk in the streets. Our end drew near. Our days were numbered, for our end had come. Our pursuers were swifter than the eagles of the heavens. They had chased us on the mountains. They lay wait for us in the wilderness. The Lord's anointed, the breath of our life, was taken in their pits. Of the one of whom they said, under his shadow we shall live among the nations. So what does that mean? The Lord's anointed was taken in their pits. That's the king. Was taken in their pits. Under his shadow we shall live among the nations. The Lord's anointed. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, you that live in the land of Uz. But to you also the cup shall pass. You shall become drunk and strip yourself bare. So this makes me wonder, O daughter of Edom, who lives in the land of Uz, if Joe's did take place in Edom. It may have. There is an Uz listed in the ancestry of Edom. It just seems like it would be too far for Job. The punishment of your iniquity, O daughter Zion, is accomplished. He will keep you in exile no longer, but your iniquity, O daughter Edom, he will punish and will uncover your sins. Remember, they were involved in the raid of Jerusalem at this point. Remember, O Lord, what has befallen us. Look and see our disgrace. Our inheritance has been turned over to strangers, our homes to aliens. We have become orphans, fatherless. Our mothers are like widows. We must pay for water we drink. The wood we get must be bought with a yoke on our necks. We are hard driven. We are weary. We are given no rest. We have made a pact with Egypt and Assyria to get enough bread. Our ancestors sinned. They are no more, and we bear their iniquities. Slaves rule over us, and there is none to deliver us from their hand. We get our bread at the peril of our lives because of the sword in the wilderness. Our skin is black as an oven from the scorching heat of famine. Women are raped in Zion, virgins in the towns of Judah. Princes are hung up by their hands. No respect is shown to elders. Young men are compelled to grind. The boys stagger under loads of wood. The old men have left the city gate, the young men their music. The joy of our hearts has ceased. Our dancing has turned to mourning. The crown has fallen on our head. Woe to us, for we have sinned. Because of this our hearts are sick. Because of the things our eyes have grown dim. Because of Mount Zion, which lies desolate, jackals prowl over it. But you, O Lord, reign forever. Your throne endures to all generations. Why have you forgotten us completely? Why have you forsaken us these many days? Restore us to yourself, O Lord, that we may renew our days as of old, unless you have utterly rejected us and are angry with us beyond measure. So this is probably written in the aftermath. Remember, Jeremiah is still going to be there. He's going to have this Gedaliah who's going to hang out with him, and then they're all going to go into Egypt. So this is probably the aftermath where people are just running through and mocking them and raping their women and stuff like that because they have no defender. They have no royal line. They have no army. What they would have had left for armies are actually going to go into the service of Babylon. That's what happens when kings take over your armies. They might leave a very, very minimal guard, but they'd left a governor, and the governor got killed, so he probably didn't have no guard. That's it. I mean, probably had a very small bodyguard, but that's it. So they don't have an army. They have no one to defend the widowless and the father and the orphan. God has abandoned them for their sins. So that's that. We're gonna end with that, and like I said, next time we're gonna jump into Daniel just for a few chapters, and then Ezekiel. And Ezekiel is gonna cover somewhere around, I think all his prophesying probably takes place over the course of like 30 years-ish. And then we're going to jump back to Daniel, and he's going to be a much older man when he does most of his prophesying. Remember, he just interprets a prophecy early on, and then he does a bunch of prophesying later, starting with he gets his first prophecy in Belshazzar's day, and then he gets called to Belshazzar's court to read the writing on the wall, and then the rest of his prophesying is going to be after Belshazzar in the days of the Persians. So there's a pretty big gap in Daniel. It's going to be a gap of some I don't know, decades. It's definitely decades because it's going to take place over something like 50 years. So hope you guys are blessed by this. Have a great rest of your week. Batman out. Peace.
Peace, I'm out. I'm Batman.